Hey, welcome to the GC Hammer Show. That's Jack Hammer. I'm Grant Cohn. I pressed the wrong button to start the show, but we're going now. Just want to remind you, this is simulcasted on my channel and Jack Hammer's as well. So if you'd like to leave a super chat and you're feeling like Jack's making a lot more sense than I am today and you want to reward him for his cogent analysis, go to his channel, watch on his channel. It's the same show. You can tip him directly. I just wanted to point that out. Jack, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's April and we got basketball and football to talk about, although me and you were just going to talk football today. But it's nice that there's like things going on as opposed to nothing going on because the Niners don't have a first round pick and normally that would kind of piss me off. But I'll let it slide. This one time.
The basketball is fun. The basketball games are a lot of fun. The Warriors and the Kings. The Warriors down 0-2 for the I think it's only the third time in Steve Kerr's reign at Golden State, and they're definitely in tough against the Kings. Kings are doing a really good job here.
My mic wasn't on. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's start. Good thing I got that out of the way now. Mic's on, ready to go. Let's talk. So we've been talking a lot of quarterbacks, and we're going to talk quarterbacks. I don't want to start there today. The name of the show is Why the Niners Are Meeting with So Many Wide Receivers. Can you give the background a little bit? Like, they're meeting with a lot of wide receivers who are going to get taken pretty high in this draft.
Yeah, they've met with a ton, and they've actually had two now in for their top 30 visits. They had Jaden Reed from Michigan State. That's an interesting one. And Tavian out of Virginia, both in on top 30 visits. They've met with Jonathan Mingo out of Old, who is, I think, as high as a third round prospect. So they've met with quite a few. So it's an interesting one, especially when you look at where the 49ers are, because they do have a wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk who is kind of, be expecting, I think, a big payday here. So I think it's quite interesting, the number of people that they're looking at in terms of the wide receiver room.
Yeah. I sort of put two and two together with this when they signed Chris Conley. I'm thinking basketball. When they signed Chris Conley, I'm thinking, why is he here? Whose position does he play? He's not a flanker. He's not the kind of guy you'd put in motion or put in it or throw a screen to. I mean, he's the kind of guy you put on the line of scrimmage and ask him to run the routes that Brandon Ayuk runs. And that reminds me, just because Brandon Ayuk isn't being vocal and showy about it like Debo was last year, doesn't mean that there isn't a similar situation going. He did put out one tweet. He did make it clear that he's not particularly happy with his role in the offense, and he intends to prove that he's worth big money. At least that was the implication. So if the Niners feel like, look, man, you're a great player, but you're a very good player, but you're not a great player, and we're not going to pay you and Debo Samuel all this money, and we already picked who we want, so you got to go. I wouldn't be surprised. It's just not something they're going to broadcast.
Yeah, there's been some smoke around this already with Ayuk. Maybe going in a different direction. There was the whole thing with the Giants, if you remember that, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then the first thing that kind of caught my eye was Friday when they had Laquan Treadwell was in for a look. They met with Conley and Treadwell at the same time. So that was the first thing for me that maybe tipped off that something's happening here with Ayuk. People, Ayuk's one of their top receivers. So I think people look at that and they're like, hey, what are you talking about? That's crazy. But you start to look at the money around this team. They still have to sign Nick Bosa, and it's going to take a lot of money in that direction. And is Ayuk that you want to spend $15 to $20 million on moving forward? And that's, I think, the question that the 49ers need to be asking themselves right now.
Also, I think from their perspective, they're so committed to McCaffrey, Debo, and Kittle. Those guys are highly paid. They all demand a lot of targets. And from Ayuk's perspective, he deserves a lot of targets too, but he just is fourth in the pecking order because of, financial reasons and all of that. If he were to go to another team, he might be happier. What the Niners want, they might say, you know what, we could trade Ayuk and get a wide receiver who's bigger than him, faster than him, but doesn't demand as many targets and can be sort of like our big play X factor fourth threat. Like maybe that's what they want. And if Ayuk has outgrown that, they can get someone who's a little bit more explosive, who demands fewer targets. Maybe that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think Ayuk is somebody that could get them a second round draft pick. I think you look at Ayuk, and he was taken at the end of the first round. I think they'd be happy if they can get a high second round pick for Brandon Ayuk. That would be put them right in play with some of these top offensive linemen, some of these top tight ends, and other people that are out on the market that they've been taking looks at. And so if they're going to jump up that high, I think that it's Ayuk that they're going to have to use to do that, not Trey Lance. I know there's been a lot of talk around Trey Lance being traded during the draft as well. I don't think they can get up as far with Lance as they can with Ayuk.
Ayuk's worth a lot more because he has not missed a game in the last couple of years. He's a hell of a player. I agree. It seems like what the Niners could do if they really want to get a starting right tackle or a starting D end, someone that's way out of their range, they could trade Ayuk. They could get that guy, although you got to be careful because that's kind of how you ended up with McGlinchey. But you could trade Ayuk. You could draft someone in the end of round 1 or early round 2 and then take a wide receiver in round 3. I think that's kind of what they're looking at. Like, again, what Mike Conley was 5-6 years ago might be what all they need at split end. If you have Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey, all you need is someone like I keep calling him Mike Conley. Chris Conley, who's about 6'3", runs a 4.3, and you know he's going to get a couple shots a game. And you're worried about it, but he's not the focal point of your offense, and he doesn't jump up and down and spin in circles and get upset if he doesn't get the ball. Maybe that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, or Danny Gray. Maybe Danny Gray is that guy.
Gray.
They used that pick last year in the third round, and now they've had him in. As the season went on last year, he did get a little more time on the field as the year rolled along. So maybe that's the play here. You move on from Brandon Ayuk, you kind of promote Danny Gray because that's the guy who's kind of just been lingering out there. What's his role? Maybe the Friars envision his role as being the guy that takes over for Brandon Ayuk. And so maybe that's where they decide to go in that direction. And they bring in another young guy now that can kind of still fill that role, but also maybe take over for Juwan Jennings next year.
Good point. Or maybe they're thinking Danny Gray plus a guy in a platoon to replace Brandon Ayuk. Either way, I think what we're saying is as good as Brandon Ayuk is, he's replaceable. I mean, frankly, the Niners don't have enough targets to go around. They're a run-first team. As Brandon Ayuk said, right? They're a run-first team, and he's the fourth option. They don't have enough targets to go around. They're heavily invested in the other 3 guys. What they need is a big play guy to make the most of 3 targets a game, and that's not Ayuk. Ayuk should be getting 11, 12 targets a game. He could do a little bit of everything, but from what the Niners, how they've positioned their roster, I could see them saying, you know what, Brandon, go to the Giants. And one more thing. I can understand why they wouldn't make that trade yet. You might want to wait until you see who's on the freaking board before you trade, unlike last time when they traded for Trey Lance.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think that if that trade comes down, it's going to happen, draft. The day of the draft, or that round where they think they're going to pick that guy. It's going to happen in the middle of the draft. It's not going to be in the run up to it. It's going to be during the draft. And the point that you just made, that you brought up from Ayuk and what he said there about how the number of targets, that makes a lot of sense. And that's, again, that's him. Ayuk is a guy who doesn't talk a lot, and that says a lot. And then it's just a few words that he's saying. But when you're as quiet as Ayuk is, when he moves that, I think people should really be paying attention to it, because that's kind of out of character for him.
He's quiet, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have, I'm not going to say an ego, because I'm not trying to make it a negative thing, but he has, expectations, and he's earned things. And I think he's not going to take a back seat to everyone else just because he's a swell guy. Like Deebo's not that way. Kittle's not that way. McCaffrey's not that way. Ayuk's not that way. He's like them. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. What's that saying? Still waters run deep, or something like that. For the guys that are quiet. Yes. That's Brandon Ayuk.
No doubt. Okay. Last week there was some news. Mike Florio, I believe, said that Nick Caserio could get fired after the NFL draft. That's the Houston Texans general manager. Strange report. The idea that you would fire someone, you would let someone pick all your players and tell them you're going to fire him afterward, and then actually fire him. But that was the report. And then Mike Silver came out and said, hey, if that happens, I've heard that Adam Peters is going to go to Houston and replace him, which made me feel like the whole thing had so much credibility and credence. And then Nick Caserio came out and was like, this is dumb, and I'm not getting fired. So I guess unless he's lying, we'll find out in a couple of weeks. It seems like Adam Peters is staying put for another year. Is that how you read the situation? And it seems like that's probably pretty good news.
Yeah, that's the way that I see it. If there's no position there in Houston, Adam Peters stays here, and I think that's perfect news for the 49ers. We talked about this last week. I think Adam Peters is really the guy that I like when it comes to picking players in the 49ers front office. I think he does a great job of scouting and finding those diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know how it goes, but I think all of our assumption is that John Lynch is sort of like the Carmen policy of the organization, where he explains things, he talks things, he's a great voice and a great face, but we don't really know how many decisions he's really making. And then when it comes to the drafting, I think we assume that Kyle Shanahan is probably in charge of the early picks on days 1 and 2. And I think the reason everyone has such high estimation of Adam Peters is because we assume he's in charge of the day 3 picks, which have been better than they should have been. I mean, really, really good. We don't know, but that's, I think, the guess.
Yeah, that's the guess. All the good picks are Adam Peters. All the bad picks are somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike McGlinchey, Solomon Thomas, that's all Kyle with John Lynch sprinkled on, and then Adam Peters gets to save the day on day 3.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that's the way that it works.
Yeah. So I guess he's staying put. I do think eventually they'll probably find a way to make him the general manager. Because isn't it in baseball, like usually there's a general manager and a vice president? Like Farhan Zaidi isn't the general manager of the Giants. He's like the executive vice president, something or other. Isn't it? I mean, they can give him what he wants, can't they?
They totally could especially if the money guy ends up going to Leeds United, then that opens up a spot for John Lynch to kind of bump up a little bit, and for Adam Peters to slide into that general manager role.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Giants, really quick, you mentioned it. You talk about a crappy baseball team. They are awful
and boring.
Farhan has turned them into a very bad team. That
they're like the A's. I mean, they're just boring. I mean, there's no prospects to get excited about. They don't play an exciting brand of baseball. They're just bad.
Oh. They don't spend money. That's the other piece. They don't spend money on guys that could make them better. They just keep pinching money. It's the craziest thing, because you know that they're making a ton of money for the Giants, and they just aren't spending it. So sorry, we took a little detour.
It's weird to see the San Diego Padres make the Giants look like a minor league operation, but that's what's happening.
Absolutely.
Monteture says slow phasing out of Debo. Ayuk is a perfect fit. I feel like the Giants, I feel like the Niners made their choice at wide receiver, and there's no going back. Like they can't. It's hard to get out of this Debo contract. It'll come with a lot of dead cap, right?
Yeah, it will. And I don't see it this way. I think it's the other direction. That I agree with you that they chose the receiver that they want for the long term, and it's going to be Debo Samuel.
Also, Monsa, Debo and Kyle are friends. Don't believe me? Ask either one. Brandon hasn't reached that level of relationship with Kyle yet, and I think they're going to hold that against him because it's a family. It's not just a football team. Okay. I've been talking about this with every person I've done a show with, but it was a bit of a mind blower that Brock Purdy would casually say that he's not really sure, honestly, that he'd play in this upcoming season, given what Kyle and John said just a couple of weeks ago. So I'd like to know what your take is. What do you think of Brock Purdy dropping this so casually?
I think from everything that I've heard of Purdy, when I've heard him talking, it goes back to the first comments that we've heard when he was on the radio out in Arizona a couple of weeks ago. It's been pretty much all the same thing. He's taking it one day at a time. He's just trying to get better. I think that comment was kind of a little bit of a throwaway comment. Sometimes you're just talking, right? And you're just kind of saying, I don't even know if I'm going to throw, I don't even know if I'm going to play. I'm not worried about that. I just want to get better. And so I think that's kind of the direction of where that comment came from. We'll see. I mean, he seemed in the interview that he did with, not hearing his words makes it tough too, because because the interview that he did in Arizona, you could hear what he said. So you could hear like the way that he was talking, and he knows those guys in Arizona, at least one of them pretty well. He actually works out with. And so you're able to, like, you kind of hear like the excitement in his voice as he's talking about getting ready for the next season. So without hearing everything, there's a little bit of like, things get lost in translation that way. I don't think that it's something where he's going to miss this entire season. I think he's going to be back.
Yeah, sure. I just feel like what we learned is that he doesn't know. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's like gearing up to sit out one way or another and he's going to war with the 49ers who are trying to push him to do something against his will. It could just mean, hey, man, I mean, I really don't know. I'm going to take it one day at a time. The Niners can express as much confidence as they want, but I'm just being honest. I really don't know. Never had this before. The only other quarterback in NFL history who had this procedure is a backup quarterback. I mean, we don't really know how long it took Nick Mullins to come back or what. You know what I mean? So I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I take it as it's very similar to what the 49ers have said. They've both John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have said that, until we get to 12 weeks, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be training camp. It could be 6 months, 8 months is what Kyle Shanahan said. And I know they want him to be back by training camp, but they're not going to know for sure. And I think that's kind of the direction and where that comes from with Purdy, is just because it's kind of up in the air, and I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to focus on what I can focus on right now. So that's the way I'm taking it. But then I've also been a little bit more on the side, like I said a minute ago, where I think Purdy's going to be back this year and he's going to be back early. So maybe maybe I'm just wanting it to happen instead of actually happening.
But I think from Purdy's perspective, like what you said, Shanahan said, worst case, eight months. Purdy's smart. He understands if it's 8 months, that means he won't be fully cleared until November. There's a possibility that Trey Lance is freaking rolling, just like Purdy was last year. And he understands they wouldn't bench, like undefeated Trey Lance, just like they weren't going to bench undefeated Brock Purdy. Like, things could be out of his control if it goes to 8 months. Or he could come back and have the whole team for the whole season. Like, I just felt like it was an honest answer. And I feel like it's more honest than what the Niners have been saying. The Niners have been expressing extreme optimism, which is fun.
Always. Yeah, John Lynch is and he even says
biggest
he's
offender.
He's the ultimate optimist, right? So
right.
I think that's why his comments were so much different than what we heard from the next day. They were similar, but just the tone of them was different from Kyle Shanahan, and I think with Purdy here. So we'll see. I still, I don't bet very often, but if I was going to bet, I still think Brock Purdy's going to be back for week 1.
I would say not. If I had to bet, and I don't know if you want to put something on it because I don't really like wagering that much. I usually lose. But the way I look at it is, let's say it's six months. Let's just talk it through real quick. If it's 6 months to the day, that's September 10th. Cut down date is August 30th. I mean, isn't he going to start the season on PUP? Like, couldn't he miss the first 4 games?
It all just depends on how his recovery is going, because he's going to be, if it all goes according to plan, he's going to start throwing right around June. Remember, they said 12 weeks, right? So 12 weeks is June 2nd. That's the review. So shortly after that, so he should start throwing right around that point. Now, obviously, he's not throwing a football right away. He's gearing up. He's ramping up.
He's not practicing. He's not doing 11-on-11s. Yeah.
Right. By the time...
It's kind of like the Jimmy Garoppolo in the side field situation, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I would say probably, like, in that case, if it goes all the way out to 6 months or whatever, then you're looking at sometime around August, he's probably throwing a football. He's able to start, like you said, he's doing Jimmy Garoppolo on the side field at training camp.
So he's there, but he's not practicing. But he's there, and he's participating. He's throwing. He's see, I agree with that. But I just feel like if he misses training camp, no practices, no preseason games, he might just start on PUP, and they'll go slow with him.
Well, they could, but that's also where it depends on because then they talk about it in weeks, right? So the 49ers say 12 weeks. They didn't say 3 months, because originally they said 3 months. But then once they started to break down the timeline, it was 12 weeks. So in that case, and it's 24 weeks post-surgery that he's ready to go, which gives him 2 weeks after training, after returning.
So we don't really know. Yeah. There's like a 14 to 21 day window. We don't really know. Yeah.
Yeah.
If he gets cleared before August 30th, he's in play for week 1. If he doesn't, he might have to wait until week 5 or week 10 or who the hell knows.
Yeah, I've been kind of leaning on the Nick Mullins thing in terms of the shorter time frame. But and so from that perspective, I would say I think we're going to see him start to throw and maybe even be cleared to practice around the middle of August. So he's going to have. I think at least that's what
We'll see. Yeah, because Mullins had his procedure on 26th of January, and he did do training camp with the Eagles that year. So that would be, he'd be ready right at the end of July. So that worked out for him. So it would be interesting to see if Purdy can get on the practice field in a preseason game.
with Mullins, according to the reports that at least one report that I saw, I know you saw it too.
Yeah.
He looked good in camp. But that's the thing with Nick Mullins. It's never the matter. It was never about him being able to throw the ball well. It was always about up here and the decisions that he was making.
Also, he's great. He's great in practice. He completes a high percentage of his throws. I bet he went to Philly, threw a bunch of quick passes so that he would get good reviews and stay in the league. And he was surviving at a very crucial part in his career. I salute him. But his numbers in preseason, I mean, he averaged like 8 yards of completion. I mean, it seemed like he wasn't quite himself. I think he's back now, though, which is good news for Purdy. I think he's back to full Nick Mullins. At least the numbers look the same. Whatever that is. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, he's
the full Nick Mullins. Yeah,
he's a nice backup that you want to have out there, but you don't want to have to start him for. You don't want to start him for 5 weeks.
He can't really move. He's kind of small. He really doesn't have a strong arm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So he's like Purdy without the moxie and the mobility. He gets hard. He gets down on himself. I feel like this is the one thing.
I think you're right. I think
he's
that's
down on himself.
I think that's a part of it too. Terry Brooks over there has a good little comment. He says, "Why rush Brock's rehab?" I know that's been a topic that a lot of people have been talking about, and I don't know if it's up to him, right? I mean, if his body's right, I don't think you're rushing him. I mentioned Joe Montana. Joe Montana had back surgery in 1986 that people thought were going to end his career, and he was back 56 days later. Starting in the NFL. And I know it's different because it's not his throwing arm, but your back is.
And he was also more established. He'd won a Super Bowl or two. The Niners have to decide, when is Brock ready? And a lot goes into that. It's not just when he's medically cleared. It's also, how does he look in practice? He's been in the league for freaking 1 year. He's 23 years old. Is the fact that he has no offseason, does that affect him? Or is this dude really like the 30-year-old, 23-year-old? You know what I mean? We'll see.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Monza Toure says, we got you already, Monza. You're just jeopardizing the chat. No, we got one more. King Geo says, Trey determines when Brock comes back. If he's killing it, Brock might want to come back sooner. If not, he'll sit a little longer to rise his stock value. Whew.
I think that kind of goes towards what I was just saying. I don't think that Brock returning or Brock's wanting to return has anything to do with what Trey Lance is doing. I think it all has to do with his ability, how he's feeling, and if he feels like he can get on the field and perform, then he's going to push himself as hard as he possibly can.
Okay, so Brock Purdy expressing some doubt or at least mystery as to what he's going to be able to do this year, and maybe in just a complete coincidence, the Niners are meeting with really highly rated quarterbacks who some people think could be starters in the NFL, such as Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who might not even be available when the Niners pick in round 3. What do you make of the Niners meeting with a quarterback like this?
I like this. I like Dorian Thompson-Robinson. This is actually a name that I heard from you. You kept talking about him a year and a half. You're ahead of everybody else with this guy.
I watched one college football team. This one.
And the Bruins. Poor Grant. But no, this is a good one. I've felt all along like the 49ers were going to be drafting a quarterback anyway. So this doesn't surprise me that they're looking at a quarterback here. Thompson-Robinson can go anywhere from round 3 to 5, and he gives you that mobility. He gives you a guy that can throw the ball well. I really like this guy. So I don't see it necessarily as anything towards Brock Purdy. I think he's a long-term guy. I think they're looking here in another quarterback to the room. And no, I don't drive a better car than the Stinger. Trust me.
It was used. I bought it used. I just want to say that I feel like if they like DTR, I'm not surprised because I feel like he has a lot of the traits that Purdy and Lance have. And if someone were to tell me that DTR did really well in this S2 cognitive test, I don't know if he did. But if he did, that would be the clincher. I mean, absolutely the Niners would like him because he's got the experience of Brock Purdy and he's got that mobility of Trey Lance. They want both. They clearly wanted Trey Lance's mobility. I think they want to be the number 1 rushing team in the league. And you really can't be the number 1 rushing team in the league if your quarterback isn't, a big part of that. So they want that, but they also realize that a project doesn't really fit them and they need someone who's experienced and young, and that's Purdy. And DTR's kind of got both of those. He's a 5-year starter. He runs a 4.5. He's a hell of an athlete. He's a playmaker. And if he's got the decision making too, they're all over this guy. So see it. I can see it.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. We'll see what happens. The the way that I look at the 49ers quarterback room, and I've been saying this throughout the offseason, the way that I look at it is you have two guys that are going to compete right now. It's going to be Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. They're the main competitors because Purdy's not able to go right now. So it's those two guys are competing. There's been the talk about maybe trading Trey Lance. I think if that's the case, you have Lance that doesn't get traded, though. He's not going to be traded until you need to first see what you have in a guy like Thompson-Robinson. You need to know that Brock Purdy's healthy. And then Sam Darnold's got to show you enough that you feel comfortable with moving on from Trey Lance if somebody gives you an offer. I think that's the only way that moves on. And I've kind of felt that way for a while now.
Also, I think it's you got to be honest here. It's possible that neither Trey Lance or Sam Darnold is good. You don't know. Like Sam Darnold, the results right now are not good. And with Trey Lance, it's no results and, a little uneven. So it's possible the answer is no on both of those guys. And it's also possible that Brock won't be ready right away. So again, it seems smart. Bring in another quarterback. The Niners aren't financially committed to anyone. They talk about the room, so add to the freaking room because your room might not be that strong. Frankly, it might be weaker than last year because Jimmy, at least you knew what you had with Jimmy. You could win with Jimmy. Can you win with Sam Darnold? You don't know that. Can you win with Trey Lance? You don't know that. So bring in another guy.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. You don't know that's the hard part is there's a lot of people. We're all trying kind of projecting what we think Trey is going to be. We all kind of project that, Darnold's might be better with a whatever.
It's fun to project, but you don't fucking know.
Exactly.
So cover your ass. Draft a quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I feel like Kyle Shanahan always thinks he knows, man. He always acts like he knows what's going to happen, even though he doesn't know who's going to be alive. And that gets him in trouble sometimes.
Absolutely. And that's, it does. And that's where, you just keep adding guys to the room. Compare the 49ers to what Philadelphia has, right? Jalen Hurts signed in this huge $255 million contract. They're locked into him. I know his cap hits are going to be manageable for the next few years, but that's because of the structure that they put in place. Instead of just putting out there and then restructuring next year. Basically what they already did is restructured his contract for the 3 times moving forward. So that's a big risk that the Eagles just took, because what happens if Jalen Hurts continue to play at that level as the team around them maybe isn't as strong? Then they're going to find themselves in a really tough spot when they're owing them $81 million against the cap in 4 years.
Oh, is that what it's going to be? 81?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, what I want to say is it at least for now, talk about quarterback room. They got him at a reasonable rate for now and Mariota. So Niners, you got some work to do. And the Eagles met with DTR as well. So they may not be done. I don't think they have any patience for Gardner Minshew as they should. And that guy's stiff.
I think Minshew, I don't even think he's there anymore, but
good.
Thompson-Robinson is, bring Thompson-Robinson in and have him compete with Marcus Mariota. That would be, that's a competition behind the starting quarterback.
I always felt Gardner Minshew was corny. You know what I mean? He had that little, you know what I mean? He kind of tried to make himself cool like Ryan Fitzpatrick, but Ryan Fitzpatrick seemed cool. Minshew seemed like lameness. You know what I mean? I didn't like it.
I agree with that. He was trying to make himself cool.
And it was in a very Caucasian way, not to make it racial, but I feel like a white guy does that and it's like, oh, he's so funny. Look at him. But a black guy can't really call attention to himself like that, especially a quarterback. You'd be like, how professional is this guy? Like, Gardner Minshew is unprofessional and unserious. I mean, look at him. It's not a serious quarterback. Cut your handlebar mustache. Get the hell out of here. You can't actually wear a handlebar mustache and be taken seriously as an adult. I'm sorry if you have you ever had a handlebar mustache? That's like you do it for Halloween. There's 3 occasions a year where you can have a handlebar mustache and it's not work. You can't take that shit to work.
No, it's not. You can't. That's the thing is you can't fake being cool. You're either cool or you're not. You can't fake
Thank you.
He
was faking it.
Mustache.
That's a giveaway. Trying too hard. Okay. Last topic of the day. The running game. I think one thing, the Niners are a run first team. So one place to look with the difference between Purdy and Lance and the impact they make on the offense is the running game. Let's start there because that's the sophisticated element of this offense. hit me with some numbers because I got some numbers for you. For you.
I want to hear your numbers first because I saw your number on Twitter. So that's why I want you to go first. I got to let you go first.
Okay, fair enough. I can go first. So the way I look at it is, I haven't been a fan of the way the Niners have used Trey Lance. I feel like they've run him too much. I feel like the Bills and the Eagles run their quarterbacks because they have to. Like the Bills have no running game. The running backs suck, and Josh Allen's really good at it. Jalen Hurts is the best runner on the Eagles. Like, he's really good at it, and they need him to do that for them to run. The Niners don't need to do that. Like, the Niners have a really good running game. When Purdy is their quarterback, what do they average? 5.3 yards per carry down the stretch? And he's not even part of it. He's not even freaking part of it. Like, they can run the ball without the quarterback being involved. They won an NFC championship game literally just handing off and throwing 8 passes. So I feel like I just wanted to know, what are the Niners averaging when Trey Lance hands off into starts? Because I feel like he's drawn so much attention, and 11-on-11 football is just math. So I went through the game logs, and the answer is 5.7 yards per carry when he just hands off. So I'm not saying, obviously he has to throw once in a while, but if he ever gets to ever start a game again for the 49ers, I would just say, Kyle, just start with the handoffs and go from there, because you might just have first down, second down, first down, second down, first down, second down, first down, touchdown. It might just go like that. I mean, you see what happens. Mm-hmm. You know?
And that's what we saw with Lance in week 2 against Seattle was they just right down the field. They didn't get in the end zone. They had to kick a field goal, but they moved right down the field, and I think he threw one pass on the first possession. It was a short one that gained some nice yardage after the catch and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, 100%. That's I'm with you on that. You continue to run the ball, and that's what's interesting here. So here's the other number, right? So you said with Lance, it's 5.7 yards per carry on handoffs. Mm-hmm. If you do the same thing with Brock Purdy on handoffs, so basically what you're doing is taking out the quarterback. Taking out anything that has to do with him.
Yes,
he's at 5.8 during the regular season.
Boom. How about that? Now, what I do want to say is he had the wonderful benefit of getting to play with Christian McCaffrey, but that's a very eye-opening number. That's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Also, big Jordan Mason out there.
Jordan, that's what, that's kind of it too. Because like if you wanted to start arguing against the Lance numbers, you're saying, but 51 of those yards were the run by Debo against Seattle. And
sure, then you got the one by Jordan Mason for sure. I definitely remember that.
So you've got the big Jordan Mason run. You've got like the big run from Ray McLeod against Washington for 71 yards. So it all
that's
kind
right.
of
that's right. It all factors in. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it bodes well for both quarterbacks, honestly.
It does. The Christian McCaffrey piece is interesting too, because you look at the numbers, and with Christian McCaffrey, Garoppolo's at 4.5. So with Christian McCaffrey from the Kansas City game until the time he went out against Miami, they were averaging 4.5 yards per carry with Christian McCaffrey, not always on the field, but after that.
And I noticed, I was like, hey, this guy really isn't playing that well, but all of a sudden Brock Purdy comes in and you have to worry about his pocket movement, and boom.
And I think that's the biggest thing is everybody's kind of gotten into Christian McCaffrey
Zone
and
read.
His impact on the game, when in reality, Christian McCaffrey's biggest impact on the 49ers isn't in the run, it's in the pass. It's that ability for the quarterback to he's another wide receiver on the field. He's a really good running back, don't get me wrong. I thought that acquisition was huge for the 49ers.
But he's a better receiver.
Yes, his biggest impact is on the passing side. So if you want to see, when we're arguing with Lance going forward, it's not about the running game. It's about, can Lance match what Purdy did in the passing game with Brock Purdy, and we're going to see that during the preseason. Or
fair. I just feel that with Lance, if they ever get in a rhythm and give him some time, they can become the best running attack in the league. And I don't know that they'll ever be that with Purdy. Now, they don't have to be that with Purdy. They could be more balanced. They could be more of a passing attack with Purdy. But with Lance, you go back to week 1, they ran the ball for a ton of yards against Chicago. And Chicago ended up being the number 1 rushing team in the league. The Niners way outrushed them in week 1 of that game. So I feel like if you just established the running backs, let Trey Lance just hand off and like sprinkle him in as a runner when they least expect it, that would be a devastating rushing attack. But eventually he's also going to have to show all the stuff that you just said as a passer for him to actually make the offense better than what it is with Brock Purdy. Overall.
Yeah, we just haven't seen Lance at this point be able to really get to the outside, get to the edge in the running game. We haven't really been able to see him get. We've seen them try it.
You know who can though? DTR.
He's quick. Did
you see that play where he got to the edge and then cut back and ran all the way for a 70-yard touchdown? Good times.
I did.
DTR time.
I saw that when I saw that on the highlight. I think it was.
Did you see Jordan Palmer break down his game? Carson Palmer's brother?
No, it wasn't. I don't think that's where I saw it. It was just a highlight package of him.
Check it out on YouTube. He's very complimentary. He basically says all quarterbacks in today's NFL to be successful need three things, which is interesting because his brother didn't have one of these. He said you have to be able to get the ball out of your hands quick. Carson could do that. He said you got to be able to get out of the pocket with your legs and create play. Carson couldn't do that. You got to be able to push the ball down the field. Carson could do that. So that's the three things. And with Trey, I think the question is, can you get the ball out of your hands quick? That's been his issue, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's can you get the ball in your hands quick? Yeah, get it out quick and accurately to those underneath guys.
Yeah, if he can do that, I mean, he can push the ball down the field. He can scramble. He should be a good quarterback. But if you can't hit the layups, you're not a good quarterback. I don't know what he can do. He hasn't played enough. Everything about him is a small sample size, so I don't really know. It seemed like he could hit the layups in college, so I guess we'll see.
That is the hard part, is that it's we don't have the sample size. The injury just kind of, last year, that's the big problem with the injury that he had last year, was he should have had an entire season of development, and that went out the window. And now he's just now getting back to, really throwing fully.
Right.
He's for the last month or so. So all that stuff kind of together is just put him behind the eight ball. And I think it's tough. I hope that he can come out and show a fraction. If he can hit his potential, if he can be the guy that everybody expects when you look at him, I mean, you're right. I think he takes the team to another level because of his ability to do everything. But we just haven't seen it yet. That's the biggest thing.
Well, what's interesting is you said that he should have got developed last year. He got hurt. No one's fault. Well, not his fault. Now he's behind the eight ball. Well, the eight ball is Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy got hurt too. So all of a sudden, it's not good, but all of a sudden there is an opportunity for Trey that really shouldn't be there. Like if Brock Purdy weren't hurt, it'd be over. It'd be over. But he is hurt, and it's serious, and you don't know what he's going to be like when he comes back. You don't know when he's going to come back, what it's going to be like. A lot of questions. So all of a sudden, the Trey Lance door opens again, and it's worthwhile to just find out. And I hope Kyle has a better game plan for weeks 1 and 2 if it comes to that than he did last year, because I thought it was very much, let's run Lance. Let's run Lance. It's like, man, if you really had to rank the Niners ball carriers, where would he rank? There's probably 5 or 6 guys I'd rather have running the ball than him. Just saying. I mean, you can't say that about the Bills.
No, I agree with you. I think that's the thing is there was an evaluation of Trey Lance that was missed. I think the 49ers thought they were getting a guy who could run the ball and do all those things like a Josh Allen. And he doesn't seem, it's weird because he doesn't seem comfortable doing it with the 49ers, but he did it all the time in North Dakota State. So it's interesting how that shift has taken place. And I can't say that I fault the 49ers for that misevaluation, because there was a lot of people who get paid a lot of money to evaluate football or talk about football on major networks that we're talking to Trey Lance and his ability to be a big time runner in the NFL. And it just hasn't, changed, hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
I talked about
it's also been
draft, and she was talking about how the 49ers goes, and it just isn't showing up at all.
Yeah, it's also been 4 games though, and I feel like if he gets in the open field in one game, you would look at him different. Like I don't think he runs a 4.8. I don't think he runs a 4.7. I think he probably runs in the mid 4.6s, which is not. They probably thought he was faster than that. They probably thought he was a 4.5 guy. Probably not. But still, I mean, at 4.65, if that's what he is, he's faster than Josh Allen. Like, you can work with that. At his size, like, don't just throw up your hands, Kyle Shanahan, and be like, it's not what I thought. Like, no, it's not Johnny Manziel at 5'10 running a 4.65. This is Trey. You can work with this. Just don't run him, like, so much. And so, obviously, be a little bit more judicious, because just him handing off is such a good play. Such a good play.
Yeah, and I know he has the wheels. We've seen him. We've seen it in training camp. We saw it in training camp last year. He takes off.
We've seen him in a couple scrambles.
Yeah, taking off. Yeah,
to him.
He's fast. He once he gets going, he's fast. But the thing is, it's just it's like getting from first gear to
he's
top
not
gear.
explosive. He's not explosive.
Right. It takes there's a little bit of build up to it. His that's why you look at like the 10-yard split stuff, and that's where I would say, you know, Purdy, if he were running a 10-yard, if you're running a 40-yard dash, Purdy's going to be ahead of him at 10 yards. It's from there on where Lance's size and you know, stride kind of takes over, but that first 10-yard, but that burst isn't what's there, and that's why he's kind of stuck as being an, you know, kind of a more between the tackles runner.
Yeah. Yep, I would agree. So, going to be interesting. I guess I just feel like with Kyle, if he drafts DTR, I think it'd be a big step for him because DTR plays for he plays for Chip Kelly, he plays for a spread offense. And I kind of feel like Kyle and his dad scout the offense more than they scout the player. And I feel like you can see that with Trey. I feel like they wanted Trey to be Justin Fields. But Justin Fields was at Ohio State playing in a spread offense, and so they wrote him off. And they're like, well, this guy is just the same athlete, but he's under center. And it's like, no, he's not the same athlete. And this is the athlete you wanted, but you projected all of that onto him because you like this offense better. And I think that's a common mistake you see when people evaluate quarterbacks in general. It's just when you read the evaluation, it's like, are you talking about the player or the system? You know?
Yeah. No, I see that. I see like between Lance and Fields, the biggest difference was Fields wasn't playing under the center. He wasn't doing all the things that the 49ers do. So you couldn't see him running all the 49er stuff. Mm-hmm. You also didn't see him necessarily integrated into the running game, I think, as much as Lance was at North Dakota State. And so I think that's part of it too. You see, and even now with the Bears to an extent, a lot of his bigger plays are coming off of he's able to get to the edge and scrambles and the runs there. And I just feel like he's a much better runner overall than you have with Trey Lance. It's just come out that way. And I think the reason they liked Lance more than Fields is when you watch them play, the decision making of Lance was a little bit better than Fields. Fields just kind of seemed to get. I think the difference Fields was freelance. I guess I'd say freelancing more than what Lance does, and I think that's why kind of what leads them towards Trey.
And he still does, and maybe he didn't perform as well in the S2 cognitive test because Trey Lance did perform well on that. But all I know is that Lamar Jackson is, as far as like athleticism, it's right there with Lamar, and bigger. He's great, and I wouldn't write him off. I mean, if you put him on the Eagles. I mention them every single stream. If you put him on the Eagles, I think he could do everything Jalen Hurts does.
I think he could too. I don't doubt that he can make all the. That's the thing. I mean, most teams don't throw the ball deep all that often. They do push the ball down. The over 20-yard percentage throws is kind of similar, but he hits them more than the other teams. I think that if you put Justin Fields on a team with a good coaching staff and all the playmakers that he had in Philadelphia last year around Jalen Hurts, I think that, you're talking about Justin Fields in the way that everybody's talking about Hurts right now.
Exactly. So it's important to remember that Justin Fields has the misfortune of playing for the Chicago Bears, who, I don't know, they seem to hate their quarterbacks as much as the Niners do.
But they at least they added they're trying to add some pieces around them, and we'll see how it works out.
They did. Although, that's not my breakout team in the NFC. I think Detroit has got a leg up on Chicago. I think Detroit's going to win that division.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue against them. I think it's going to be between Detroit and Minnesota. Those are the top two. I think Minnesota might be a little bit better because they changed out their defensive coordinator. If their defensive coordinator is better, that's a team to watch out for because offensively they're good. With the defense is what held them back so much last year.
It's true.
Detroit, I really like Detroit. I thought they were one of the better teams towards the end of last year. And it's funny because the team that ultimately knocked them out, the quarterback whose team ultimately knocked the Lions out of the playoffs last year. Sam Darnold.
That's right. Don't sleep on Big Sam.
They couldn't stop him.
Says wait till Parag gets to Yorkshire. Do you think Parag has to move to the UK? Like, is that he's the owner of the team? Like, how do you own the team from here?
I mean, it depends on what he has over there for his management stuff, right? Because I don't know if you how much soccer you watch. I got into soccer a little bit over the last year because I watched Welcome to Wrexham. which is a show about the Wrexham soccer team that is owned by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yes.
Yeah. So I got into I've gotten into soccer from that to a certain extent. They're nowhere near the level of that, but they have good management there, and they fly back and forth because they're more on the East Coast. And I don't know. I think that he probably should be spending most of his time out there. I don't think Leeds is doing all that well right now.
Yeah. He had the nerve to call the Niners a lemonade stand, before the Yorks got there. And now, because that explains why he's going to do so well at Leeds. I'm trying to look at how many championships does Leeds have? I'm looking on Wikipedia. It says return to the championship. Have they ever won a championship ever? They've been around since the 1920s. Because this seems like if Parag's as good as he thinks he is, he's gonna turn Leeds United into Manchester United. Let's see you do it.
I think if it comes down to Parag having to do anything, he's probably going to turn them into more of a team that's like one of the guys over here in the comment section says they're going to be relegated and they're going to start working their way out of the Premier League and down to the lower levels.
I'm rooting against Leeds now. I don't know why.
I don't blame you. Imagine if the NFL, American football, needs to come up with a premier system. They need to have the NFL, USFL, and XFL, something like that, and then you can bump teams up and down, right? So we can get
That'd be so great.
We can get the Raiders and bump them down to the USFL, bump up the Memphis Showboats, whatever. That'd be a lot of fun.
I think it'd be phenomenal. Absolutely. This should definitely happen. Andrew says, with all these young quarterbacks, what's Greasy's track record with developing young quarterbacks? If he isn't the guy, who could the Niners get that's better than him? What would Kyle say? Well, we don't really develop our quarterbacks. They kind of do that in the off season. Brian's really here to help them through the stresses and trials and tribulations of the season. Right? Isn't that what he would say?
He says something. It'd be something like that, I think. But I think that I thought that Greasy did a pretty good job last year. I mean, other than Josh Johnson, the quarterbacks that came in for the 49ers, I think, Lance played okay. We know the weather situation that kind of was around there, and he wasn't anything really different. I felt like Garoppolo played okay, and then you had a rookie 7th round draft pick come in and almost take you to the Super Bowl. So I felt like Greasy did just fine.
I think the best thing he did last year was see it on film with Brock, along with Kubiak and Steve Slowick. Those three props, because I didn't even totally overlook Brock Purdy. I looked at him for 2 seconds. I was like, they just drafted CJ Beathard again, didn't they? But no, he could actually move. Corey Soto says, wait, so now the emerging consensus is Darnold will be QB1 to start the season. This whole QB situation is dumber and dumber and dumberer. It's interesting that everyone's hot take is that that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Niners probably have a better chance to make something out of Lance than Darnold, personally, considering Darnold's chances.
I don't know. I know the national guys are out there saying that it's, if it's not Purdy, that it's going to be Sam Darnold. I don't know if I agree with that. I think I think it's a real competition, and Trey Lance has a really good shot of being the guy that does it. If he's better than Sam Darnold and playing better than him in the training camp, and he's doing everything, I don't see why you'd start Sam Darnold just to start him. I think it's Trey Lance.
Yeah. Also, when we overanalyze his throwing videos, I think it's important to remember that the guy hasn't been throwing since he injured his ankle. That was bad. He missed a lot of time. So he's back to, square one in a sense. And I think it's kind of unrealistic to expect wholesale changes. The process starts now. And that's why the last 2 years has been so disappointing. But he's not even 23 yet. He turns 23 in 3 weeks.
Yeah. No, that's 100%. That's it. He just started throwing again. Right around the time of the combine. So you can't throw if your ankle's jacked up. So yeah, it makes sense. And it's, hopefully you get a lot more slow-mo, shots of a really tight spiral to get you through the rest of the offseason.
And one more point before we go. We mentioned, you got to draft another quarterback. Brock Purdy, we talk about it a lot. He didn't have that much arm strength to begin with, and now he's coming back from a UCL injury. Will the arm be an issue? Well, what about Trey? We just talked about how he's not quite as fast as not slow, but he's not quite as fast as you'd hoped for a dual threat. He's already the lower end of desired speed for a dual threat quarterback. Like, is he still a dual threat quarterback? Or because like Dak doesn't look like a dual threat quarterback anymore. Dak looks slow as hell. Is that going to be Trey, or is Trey? Like, we don't know. So, and then you got Darnold, who just right now the results say he sucks. So yeah, you got to bring another quarterback.
Yeah, you absolutely. You have to. You have to. I don't know if Darnold can participate in the rookie minicamp since he was a new guy. I don't think he can. So I don't know. I think that they want to bring in. I think they want to draft a guy. I think they want to have 4 guys compete, and somebody's going to be on the way out at the end of the training camp.
Gerald Hall says, "Who is your choice at quarterback, Grant and Jack?" Dorian Thompson-Robinson. No, Trey. I would say Trey.
Okay,
and I'm assuming that Brock's on PUP and hasn't had a practice, a snap, a preseason game. I'm saying Trey.
Yeah, if Brock Purdy's on the PUP list or on IR or whatever, then yeah, I think it's going to be Trey Lance. Otherwise, I think if you're asking me who I think is going to start week 1 for the 49ers, I think it's going to be we're going to have Brock Purdy be the starting quarterback week 1. I think that's what we're going to see.
That's what they're saying. Lead 68, 73, 92, Yo-Yo Club Money Burner. Don't know what Yo-Yo Club Money Burner means, but I'm guessing they won in 68, 73, and 92. Okay, so they got a little bit of history. All right, let's see. Hey, a guy like Parag should be able to turn that into one hell of a team.
Well, the good thing for Parag is Leeds has not won a championship about the same amount of time as the 49ers, so he's kind of getting into familiar territory there.
6-1, half dozen the others. Exactly. He's right in his wheelhouse now. All right, that's Jack, this was fun. What you got going on the rest of the day, week, year?
I don't have a whole today. This was it for today. I'll be back.
Cool.
I've been doing shows a little bit differently lately. Been kind of doing stuff and then just uploading it with a little bit more video and stuff. But nice. I'll be back for sure on Thursday and then Friday as well. So you'll see some stuff there, and you might see an upload tomorrow as well.
All right, and we'll do this again next week. But I'll be seeing you next week too, because we got some official beat writer business to do.
That's right. I'll see you on Monday.
See you on Monday. See you on Friday. See you on Saturday. See you on Sunday. It's going to be great. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Get a better sign.